Hey Jay, it's Mrs. Wallace. Hi, I hope all is well. I just wanted to give you a quick video about some of the things that you missed in class. I had said I would do a video and just a couple of things. I'm trying to remember the exact point where you may have stopped taking notes, but I'm going to start with the reasons for the spread of the Islamic Empire. This could be asked in a couple of different ways. If we're looking at the time period right after Prophet Muhammad, so he dies in 632, there is a huge military conquest that occurs under the first four caliphs and then again under the Umayyad Empire. And if we look at why there is such a large-scale conquest, why the empire's scale increases so dramatically, there's probably a couple of different historian arguments. Some of the arguments include that the armies were very, very disciplined. So we have, a military that's largely very effective. There were also a lot of new recruits, and some of this may have been because there were some incentives to participate. There was a salary, for example, that was pretty nice offer. So some people who are recruited to join the military, some of that may also make a difference. Most of the land that the Islamic Empire is attacking is to the east and the west of the Arabian Peninsula, east in terms of Persia, and west in northern Africa, and maybe some northern territory too, in former Byzantine areas around Syria. One of the things that occurs is the Byzantines and the Sassanids had been fighting each other. So this large-scale Christian empire and a Zoroastrian empire are going to be fighting each other. It makes both of them militarily weak in terms of addressing the Islamic Empire. And so lots of Byzantine or Sassanid territory will ultimately go to the Islamic Empire. There's also an argument that maybe there's some economic ambition. There are some ways that maybe upon conquest, there might be some booty that gets shared. Largely, we don't see massive destruction of cities, so it's not as if this is like a Viking raid or anything like that. Most of the way in which this military conquest will occur is that the move in of the individuals who are the military leaders, whether under the first four caliphs or under the Umayyad, largely they become like a garrisoned force that become the political leaders ruling through military conquest, but not necessarily through destruction. There's a few places where that may occur and there may be significant conflict, but in a lot of cases, individuals who were previously living in the Sassanid or Byzantine Empire continue to live just under different rule, in this case, Islamic rule. The argument about religious zeal as like a primary force for creating, the success. Like, is it that these Muslim armies were largely looking to convert, and religious, zeal was part of the reason why they were so successful? There certainly may have been individuals who were motivated by some degree of religious belief, but we don't see large-scale conversion. So most mainstream and modern-day historians suggest this argument of religious zeal is not necessarily the case. An historian by the name of Frankopan largely argues that the Islamic military becomes very good at making negotiations, basically, negotiations between groups of Christians and Jews for some kind of shared use of the space. So Christians and Jews might be able to keep some of their local rulers. They might be able to continue some of their religious practice. They might have to pay a tax. They might have some restrictions on the way in which they practice their religious beliefs. But there's some negotiation that is possible. Frankopan actually argues that, Jews and Christians and Muslims enable some specific rules, in various regions of this growing empire, to kind of live where now the political rule has changed hands. In fact, some Christians and Jews may have seen themselves much better off under the Islamic Empire than perhaps a Byzantine Empire that restricted all forms of Christianity that were not the state religion, and certainly mistreated Jews. So, there's that argument, and it's kind of a to what extent question. Any one of those arguments could be possible. In which area was which, force maybe the most significant reason. The other things that we talked about in class, so just going to note a couple of other examples, and this is similar to what I just noted, that those people who are persecuted might have welcomed the conquerors. The Quran also forbid forced conversion. Christians and Jews were seen as people of the book. So because they were monotheistic, believed in quite a few, core ideas. Muslims would see Christians and Jews as largely believing in the same God, maybe not the perfect, form of monotheism, because there's no revelations from Allah in the Christian or Jewish faith. And there are also, Muslims wouldn't see the crucifixion of Christ, for example, as something that would make Christ divine. So there's a lot of differences between the religions, but Muslims would see Jews and Christians as similar in a monotheistic sense, and that might be significant. The other thing that we do see is a large-scale territorial expansion. By the time we have reached the Umayyads in 750, most of the area of northern Africa into Spain has actually fallen to the Islamic Empire. So this includes, all of the area of the Arabian Peninsula, all the way into northern Africa, all the way into Spain. And that is a massive expansion. We also will see a lot of the expansion into Persia, so into the eastern area of the the eastern area of the Arabian Peninsula, into places like modern-day Iran or modern-day Afghanistan, a lot of that area, even into parts of northern India at this time. This is also where we see the Battle of Tours, where the Islamic Empire does reach the Franks, and Charles Martel will push the Islamic Empire back. Largely, this is because the Islamic Empire will choose to move itself back. It's largely not looking to seek to control Europe. So if we look at a map, you can kind of see the size of the Umayyad dynasty in the year of 656 to about 750. We get this large area, Spain, all the way through northern Africa, Alexandria and Egypt, Cairo, these areas, all the way through to the Sindh area of India, and moving here, kind of the modern day countries of Iraq, Iran, and Afghanistan. We see Baghdad become very significant under the Abbasids. Damascus becomes the capital city under the Umayyads. Okay, and the Umayyads are first, very short reign, and then the Abbasids will reign for some time. A couple of things about some political disunity, and this is the bulk of, I think, what you missed the day that you were out. One of the things, even despite all of this growth of scholarship and wealth and state kind of trade and some of that, there is a lot of political disunity happening, and it happens in a variety of ways, but just to kind of give you a sense, in the time period of the death of Muhammad, there is a decision that the community has to make who will be the person to follow Muhammad. He was the seal of the prophet, so nobody is going to be a prophet after him. No one else is going to receive revelations from Allah. He is the only messenger for the revelations that are in the Quran, but there is a sense that the community can continue under the rule of a caliph who is seen as a religious and political leader. The very first caliph who follows in the steps of Muhammad will be Abu Bakr, who is elected by a community of elders, so groups of people who are seen as significant, most of them aristocratic, wealthy, tribal leaders end up selecting Abu Bakr. There will always be questions of whether or not the individuals who select Abu Bakr are going about this the right way. There will be community members who think that the person who follows and who serves as caliph should have a bloodline to Muhammad. And so Ali, who is Muhammad's cousin and son-in-law, becomes a consistent request for some in the community. The caliphs kind of follow along Abu Bakr, and then Umar and Uthman. The early caliphs, not one of them really rules for a significant amount of time. A lot of it is conquest and territorial expansion, and a lot of them, not Abu Bakr, but the three other of the first four caliphs are actually assassinated. And by the fourth caliph, we do see an election of Ali, who's appointed by this council of leaders who suggest that he should be the next caliph. There are, however, enemies of Ali. Somebody by the name of Muawiyah, who's like part of the Umayyad dynasty, believes that Ali didn't really do enough to find out about the assassination of Uthman. And so there is a little bit of a power struggle between Muawiyah and Ali. And Ali, while he's still caliph, is seeing Muawiyah gain some power. Ali's kind of home base is going to be more of a Persian presence, and Muawiyah is going to have his dominance in the area of Syria. So some of this is like a little bit of like geopolitical movement, but the issue is going to create a civil war between Muslims, and it's also going to maybe kind of solidify a group that will become known as the Shia, the party of Ali. This becomes a group that basically believe that there should be a caliph who has a bloodline to the Prophet, and Ali is seen as having a special connection, largely because many Shia believe that Muhammad had pre-selected Ali to follow in his footsteps, and that the Shia see that Ali is like the rightful ruler. There's a second civil war that occurs because the children of Ali, including two sons, Hassan and Hussein, and the son of Muawiyah. After he starts to take control and the Umayyad dynasty begins, Muawiyah will make the rule hereditary, and his son Yazid becomes the next ruler. There's contention because some people in the community will believe Ali's sons should have that role, and there's a bunch of ways in which both Hassan and Hussein start to get involved in the kind of becoming the next caliph. There's a civil war about this as well. Hussein in particular will be attacked by Yazid's troops at the Battle of Karbala. It is seen as a massacre, and Hussein, his whole family, and others are killed. And as a result of the Battle of Karbala, the Shia become even more identified with martyrdom and the belief that relatives of Ali have the deserving place in terms of the caliph. So I'm going to stop it there. Let me know if you get this video, and I will see you in class.